On April 5th, 1909, a story was published in a newspaper. This was just a normal story told to the populace at that time. Nothing much to think of, until it caused an uproar that threatened the existence of everything we believed in. This story has survived time, and even 115 years later, this story is still being told both by people who believe in it and those who don't. That's how great and controversial this story is. What was talked about in this story that drew people's attention? Who was the author? And why is everything surrounding this story shrouded in mysteries? Well, that is what we are about to show you. For those of us who can barely see what's on the screen, let me explain it to you. This is the front page of the Phoenix, Arizona Gazette, which was a major Arizona newspaper at the time. It printed a story on April 5th, 1909, called Explorations in the Grand Canyon. Mysteries of the immense rich cavern being brought to light. Jordan is enthused. Remarkable finds indicate ancient people migrated from the Orient. Basically, this newspaper just told the world that a secret hidden city was found in the Grand Canyon, and as if that was not enough, that it showed signs of previous civilization from a far continent living there. This news piece challenged the established notion of migration and ancient civilization, pointing fingers at governments and established agencies that all what they had told us or said was wrong. If this story was true, Columbus definitely wasn't the first to discover America. If anything, he never discovered anything. This story starts with a lone explorer known as G.E. Kincaid. He was traveling down the Colorado River in a wooden boat by himself in search of minerals in the canyon. The canyon was full of minerals like gold, silver, and copper, so he wanted to see if he could find some of those minerals in the canyon. He had been an explorer and hunter all his life and had worked for the Smithsonian Institute for 30 years. Now, for some of us who don't know, especially those who are not from America, the Smithsonian Institute is the world's largest museum, education and research complex, with 21 museums and the National Zoo. Kind of like a big library for everything that has ever occurred on Earth, especially in the United States of America. They've been in existence since 1846. In their words, and I kid you not, they are shaping the future by preserving heritage, discovering new knowledge, and sharing our resources with the world. But after this video, you let us know if that is true or not. Now, the Smithsonian was the agency Mr. Kincaid worked for, and was exploring things on their behalf. A little over 40 miles up the river from the El Tovar Crystal Canyon, Kincaid saw stains in a sediment formation about 2,000 feet up. This got his attention, and he decided to check it out. Kincaid couldn't find a trail, but after a short walk, he came across something very interesting. Covered in desert brush were footsteps, hundreds of them carved in sandstone. The steps led him to a cave that was clearly man-made, sparking his interest. Kincaid got his flashlight and put it on as he went into the cave. When he got into the cave, he was suddenly dumbfounded by what he saw. Kincaid found writing on the walls, but it wasn't English or Native American. It was hieroglyphics from ancient Egypt. How was that possible? Egypt was miles away from the canyon. It was literally impossible for them to have a presence in the canyon. Luckily for us, he wrote down a very detailed description of everything he saw. The main passageway is about 12 feet wide, narrowing to 9 feet toward the farther end. About 57 feet from the entrance, the first side passages branch off to the right and left, along which on both sides are a number of rooms about the size of ordinary living rooms of today. Though some are 30 by 40 feet square, these are entered by oval-shaped doors and are ventilated by round air spaces through the walls into the passages. The walls are about 3 feet 6 inches in thickness. The passages are chiseled or hewn as straight as could be laid out by an engineer. The ceilings of many of the rooms converge to a center. The side passages near the entrance run at a sharp angle from the main hall, but toward the rear, they gradually reach a right angle in direction. After a short while, it finally hit G.E. Kincaid that he wasn't just in a cave, but in a huge, man-made complex settlement carved out of the rock. In such He thought that up to 50,000 people might have lived there. There were granaries with shelves of painted pottery in some rooms. Many of the pots still had seeds in them. He found cooking areas and a large dining hall. People lived here. There were many ancient artifacts all over the rooms. In another large room, he described an area for metalwork, a technology that should not have existed in this area. In this place, he found tools of all descriptions made from copper. These people knew the lost art of hardening metal, a technique that chemists have been looking for hundreds of years without success. For several hours, Kincaid explored the sophisticated underground complex. He still didn't know when, how, or why it was built, or who the builders were. Then he found a crypt, which was in another big room. Inside were dozens of mummies on every shelf and row in the crypt, a practice that is synonymous with the Egyptians. It was at this point he realized that if he was going to explore this entire underground city, he was going to need some help. G.E. Kincaid sent a few artifacts to the Smithsonian Institute, along with his notes of what he had found. He asked for help with money and logistics for what he thought was likely the most important archaeological discovery ever made. The Smithsonian agreed. A few weeks later, Professor S.A. Jordan arrived with about 40 scientists, researchers, and workers to dig up and fully explore the ancient underground city. With more lights and people, the experts could clearly see that the layout of the cave system wasn't random, but planned and symmetrical. All of the tunnels went to a central chamber or room in the middle, and in this chamber was a big statue that Kincaid thought looked like Buddha, a religion practiced in Asia. Over 100 feet from the entrance is the cross hall, several hundred feet long, where the idol or image of the people's god was found sitting cross-legged with a lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of this face is oriental, and in this cavern, the idol almost resembles Buddha, though we are not certain as to what religious worship it represented. Taking into consideration everything found thus far, we think it possible that this worship most resembled the ancient people of Tibet. Because of this discovery, Kincaid and everyone there started calling the place the Citadel. Now we have two cultures in one place, plus counting the natives, making it 3 or 4. How was that possible? Asia, too, was far from the Grand Canyon. Their findings only led to more questions than answers. The whole cave system was explored by Kincaid, Jordan, and the Smithsonian team. There was so much evidence that this wasn't some faraway temple with only a few monks or priests living there. This was a huge city lived in by thousands of men, women, and children for hundreds or possibly thousands of years. But no one on the team knew who they were. By the end of the expedition, G.E. Kincaid and Professor Jordan's group had found hundreds of rooms, barracks, granaries, shrines, metalworking shops, and many living quarters. Thousands of artifacts were found. They also found pottery urns, utensils for cooking, small yellow stones called cat's eyes, and large stone tablets with hieroglyphics written on them. Kincaid and Jordan found a lot of artifacts and writings, but they were still not able to figure out who built the citadel in the Grand Canyon. A few of the statues looked like they were from Tibet, but they weren't quite right. The writing looked like it was from Egypt, but it wasn't quite right. Even though there were experts there, none of them could read the words or identify the statues. The experts did agree on 2 things, though. 1, people who built the citadel were very advanced, much more advanced than the native tribes who had lived in the area. I mean, this lost civilization was working with bronze years before the Bronze Age began. They understood the division of labor and agriculture when most other societies on Earth were probably still hunting and gathering. These findings went against everything that most archaeologists and anthropologists learned in school. There shouldn't be a civilization like this one. 2, they also agreed that the civilization that built the citadel did not emerge locally. Without question, this civilization came from the other side of the world. This toppled the belief held by the Smithsonian on isolationism. The Smithsonian believed that most civilizations are cut off from each other and don't interact with each other very often. especially when they're separated by large bodies of water. It was thought that the advanced and densely populated civilizations of the Ohio and Mississippi valleys were rare and didn't talk to other advanced cultures like the Aztecs, Toltecs, or Maya. So Kincaid and Professor Jordan now saying otherwise means that the Smithsonian was wrong, which would lead to major loss of faith in their capabilities. In this case, they took "the government is never wrong" seriously. Kincaid and Professor Jordan sent boxes of artifacts and books full of notes and drawings back to the Smithsonian, along with their theory that an ancient civilization existed in the Grand Canyon thousands of years before even Native Americans arrived in North America. These people were highly educated, skilled, and technologically advanced, and likely came from Egypt or Asia. Kincaid wanted more tools and a bigger group of people to help them study the citadel and look for more clues about this lost civilization in the Grand Canyon. Surprisingly, their request was turned down, and G.E. Kincaid and Professor S.A. Jordan were never seen or heard from again. Now, anytime you mention the lost civilization of the Grand Canyon, you get branded as a nut job with nothing better to do, and if you ask the Smithsonian about it, they outrightly deny it. In such, there are proofs and evidence that this compelling story I just told you is a lie. The Grand Canyon Historical Society looked into this very story in 2009, especially the news piece, and pretty much found out it was nothing more than a bad April Fool's joke. The author of the news piece is unknown, and there was never a follow-up story, which in itself is weird. As if that wasn't bad enough, G.E. Kincaid, the protagonist of this story, doesn't exist. There are no traces of anyone by that name ever existing. It was just a good Wattpad story. In such, here is a video of the Smithsonian saying that.
Smithsonian Public Relations, Marion speaking.
Hold on. Hello?
Hello?
I'm here. Sorry, I was on hold a long time.
How can I help you?
They transferred me to Marion.
Yes, this is Marion.
Okay, great. My name is AJ, and I'm with the Y-Files. We're a YouTube channel that covers mysteries.
Did you say you're from YouTube?
The Y-Files is a channel on YouTube, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you about an article that was in the Phoenix, Arizona Gazette in 1909, and they sent me to you. I was hoping to ask you a couple of questions about that.
Okay, let me stop you. No Egyptian artifacts of any kind have ever been found in North or South America.
Sounds like you've given that speech before.
Yes, I get this call a couple of times a year. I can tell you that the Smithsonian has never been involved in anything like this in the Grand Canyon or anywhere.
So, G.E. Kincaid?
There's no record of anyone by that name ever working for the Smithsonian. The whole thing is a hoax.
Yeah, that's the prevailing belief, but the Smithsonian has been accused of covering this up, so...
Yeah, I don't have a response to that.
You probably don't want to talk about giants or giant skeletons, huh?
And goodbye.
They denied Kincaid ever existing, but here is where they messed up. This is a picture of Professor Jordan. He is a known associate of the Smithsonian Institution for 30 years. So how do you explain Jordan accompanying a second party known as Kincaid? Jordan worked closely with the Smithsonian for 30 years, from the 1880s to 1910. During that time, he went on ichthyological trips down the Colorado River and into the Grand Canyon. In such, he was the president of Stanford University. But you see, Jordan had a problem. He was a strong supporter of eugenics. Eugenics is the scientifically erroneous and immoral theory of racial improvement and planned breeding. Think Hitler or white supremacists, that kind of thing. In fact, Jordan wrote the 1899 essay, A Study of the Decay of Races, through the survival of the unfit, because he believed in primitive pseudoscience and was xenophobic. In it, he showed how irrational he was about race degeneration and begged for huge efforts to keep racial unity. After people called him out for his radical idea, the Smithsonian started to cut off every form of ties and interaction with him, then later fully denied he worked with them. If not for records that couldn't be easily erased, they also would have denied that Professor Jordan ever existed, just like they did Kincaid. Everything Kincaid said was true, because what he described was used as a map to find certain locations by other explorers. So, if he was lying, how would he know the exact places? Even years after the initial discovery by Kincaid, artifacts were still found in the canyon by different explorers that proved Kincaid wasn't lying. To even add to the growing list of suspicions, the population is only allowed to visit just 2 caves in the Grand Canyon. For reference purposes, the Grand Canyon has an estimated 1,000 caves. 335 out of those caves have been discovered and recorded, and out of those 335, only 2 are allowed for public use. So, why are the remaining 333 kept out of reach? If you ask the Smithsonian, they tell you things like, tourists could destroy valuable artifacts without realizing the damage they caused, or it's not safe and they don't want you to be hurt. Now it's true, some places are closed to the public for the right reasons, like the Hopi Fire Tower and Access Road, which is closed for safety and preservation purposes, the Maricopa Point Endangered Plant Area, which is a small area on the South Rim that contains a rare plant species called century milk vetch. The area is fenced off and marked with signs to protect the plant from trampling and collecting. And even some places in the Grand Canyon are considered holy grounds to the natives. So, it's off limits. I understand all these parts, but that's just the tip of a large unexplored place. There are still a lot of places that could be explored, but anytime anyone finds themselves in an area that is blocked from the public, immediately the authorities show up. And I'm not talking of park rangers, I mean military black Apache helicopters, like in the case of these people. These were a group of explorers who tried to explore some of the areas listed in Kincaid notes. It didn't take long for this helicopter to show. I only have one question. What could the Smithsonian be hiding that they require a military helicopter to keep people out? If you know, let us know in the comment section.